A devoted wife, a celebrated hunter, and a successful dentist. But behind the perfect facade lay betrayal, greed, and a deadly ultimatum. What began as a glamorous safari in Zambia ended with a shotgun blast, a shattered family, and a chilling revelation. Love, lies, and murder intertwined. A dental hygienist gave her married lover an ultimatum. He had 1 year to leave his wife of 34 years. 11 months later, that wife, Bianca Rudolph, would be found dead in a hunting cabin in Zambia. This is the story of Bianca and Lawrence Larry Rudolph, a story that begins as a love story in Pittsburgh and ends in a nightmare on the African plains. Bianca Rudolph was born on December 4, 1959, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She grew up in a warm Italian-American family, alongside her brothers Vince and Ralph Finizio. From an early age, Bianca was known for her intelligence, compassion, and sense of adventure. She had a magnetic personality, the kind of woman people described as both kind and strong. She pursued her undergraduate studies at the University of Pittsburgh, and it was there she met a young dental student named Lawrence Rudolph. Larry was ambitious, charming, and highly driven. Bianca fell in love with him, and after graduation, the two married, building what looked like the perfect American family. Together they had 2 children, a son, Julian, and a daughter, AnaBianca. For a time, life seemed picture perfect. Larry built a thriving dental practice in Pittsburgh and even became known locally for his television commercials promoting sedation dentistry. Bianca worked in his office at first, but when the children were born, she focused on raising them, giving them a stable and loving home. Bianca's role as a mother became the center of her world. Friends and relatives recalled her devotion to her children. She was involved in their school lives, their activities, and their dreams. She was the kind of mother who seemed to give endlessly of herself. Larry, too, appeared to play his part as a father. He was generous and charismatic, often taking the children on trips and adventures. Too many on the outside, they were an enviable family, successful, well-connected, and adventurous. One of the passions that bound them together was hunting. Bianca had no experience with hunting before she met Larry, but over time, she became deeply involved. What started as a way to connect with her husband grew into a shared pursuit that took them across the globe. Bianca rose to prominence in the community of international hunters, eventually serving as president of the Safari Club International Pittsburgh chapter. Larry himself won the prestigious Weatherby Award in 2007, an honor often called the Nobel Prize of Hunting. But beneath the glossy veneer of family life and international travel, cracks had already begun to form. Larry's ambitions sometimes took darker turns. In the mid-2000s, his partners at the dental practice accused him of embezzling funds. When confronted, they gave him an ultimatum: leave quietly or face charges. Larry denied the allegations, but ultimately walked away. He soon struck back by starting his own business, Three Rivers Dental, just down the street from his former colleagues. The bitterness of that split seemed to reveal another side of him, a man unwilling to lose, unwilling to be challenged. Around the same time, another bizarre incident raised eyebrows. In 2006, Larry claimed that while fishing in Zambia, he was attacked by a crocodile and lost his left thumb. He told insurance companies that the injury left him unable to practice dentistry. He began collecting $30,000 a month in disability payments, but many of his former co-workers suspected the story was fabricated. To them, Larry was a man who always seemed to manipulate circumstances for his own benefit. His son Julian would later reflect on his father's dual nature. He said, "My mother brought out the best in him. Lori brought out the worst." Lori Miller had entered the picture in 2002, when she began working as a dental hygienist at Larry's practice. Despite knowing he was married, she began an affair with him that would stretch on for more than a decade. To coworkers, Larry's behavior was no surprise. A dental assistant later said he flirted constantly, coming on to nearly everyone in the office. The affair was eventually exposed, creating scandal within the close-knit Safari Club community. In 2012, Larry was expelled from Safari Club International after accusations of adultery, misconduct, and intellectual property violations. It was a humiliating fall for a man who prized his reputation among elite hunters. Larry sued for defamation and eventually reached a settlement, but the damage was done. His marriage was stained with rumors, and Bianca was forced into the difficult position of defending him publicly. In a deposition, she said, "I was not a long-suffering wife. I've never been a long-suffering wife. My husband and I have been married for 30-some years. Happily married." Her words carried loyalty, but many wondered how much pain she had hidden behind that defense. Behind closed doors, Lori was running out of patience. By 2015, after more than 15 years as Larry's mistress, she gave him a final ultimatum. According to his office manager, Lori told him he had 1 year to leave Bianca. She wanted the life Bianca had, the homes, the money, the respectability, and if Larry did not deliver, she would leave him. This ultimatum set in motion the events that would destroy multiple families. By this point, Larry and Bianca had moved permanently to Phoenix, Arizona, leaving Lori to run the Pittsburgh dental practices. They continued to travel widely, sometimes together, sometimes apart. Outwardly, they still looked like a couple, but the strain was mounting. In October of 2016, the couple returned to Zambia's Kafue National Park for a hunting trip. Bianca hoped to track a leopard, but instead, she killed a zebra. The trip was uneventful, and after nearly 2 weeks, they prepared to return to the United States for their daughter's wedding. On the morning of October 11th, as the couple packed their belongings in their cabin, a single gunshot rang out. Their game scout, Spencer Kokoma, rushed to the scene. Inside, he found Bianca lying on the floor, blood pouring from a wound in her chest. Her shotgun lay nearby, still half-sipped in its case, a hole torn through the fabric. Larry was kneeling beside her, crying out, "What am I going to tell my children?" But Kokoma noticed details that didn't add up. He had watched Bianca safely unload the shotgun the night before. Larry's story shifted. First, he claimed Bianca had shot herself deliberately, then that she had accidentally fired the gun while packing it away. Other inconsistencies piled up. Kokoma recalled Larry being fully dressed when he rushed in, but later Larry told police he had been wearing only a towel. The contradictions were unsettling. Bianca's body was transported to Lusaka, the capital of Zambia, for an autopsy. Larry insisted she be cremated quickly, despite her Catholic faith. Friends would later say, Bianca had spoken against cremation in the past. Within a week, she was gone, and Larry left Africa without even telling his children of their mother's death. He examined Bianca's body himself and estimated that the shotgun had been fired from 6 to 8 feet away. It was nearly impossible for her to have fired that shot herself. Larry was furious when he learned the official had inspected the body and taken photographs. His anger, combined with his insistence on cremation, raised even more questions. Still, Zambian authorities ruled the death accidental. The case was closed almost before it began. But back in the United States, whispers began to grow louder. Friends and colleagues who had long doubted Larry's honesty started contacting the FBI. Then came the money. Within a month of Bianca's death, Larry filed claims on 9 life insurance policies, totaling nearly $4.8 million. Investigators discovered he had purchased policies from 7 different companies over the years, steadily increasing the coverage. It appeared Bianca was overinsured, and Larry stood to gain millions from her death. And then, just months after Bianca's death, Lori moved into Larry's Phoenix mansion. The people who worked at his dental practice noticed more unsettling behavior. Larry instructed staff never to talk about Bianca's death. Patients who asked questions were met with silence. No flowers, no condolences, no acknowledgement of the tragedy. Then came the surveillance cameras, installed in every corner of the office, even the break room. It felt like paranoia, as though Larry feared every whisper. It was a bartender, though, who would deliver one of the most explosive pieces of evidence. In Phoenix, at a restaurant called Steak 44, a bartender named Brian Lovelace overheard a heated argument between Larry and Lori. During the fight, Larry shouted, "I killed my expletive wife for you, for the FBI." It was the smoking gun by 2021. 5 years after Bianca's death, investigators had built their case. Ballistics testing confirmed that the shotgun had been fired from at least 2 feet away. Impossible for Bianca to have shot herself while zipping the case. Witnesses testified to Larry's affair, the ultimatum, and the insurance money. On December 21, 2021, FBI agents arrested Larry Rudolph in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, where he and Lori were vacationing for the holidays. Lori was later charged with obstruction of justice, perjury, and being an accessory after the fact. Their trial began in July 2022, in Denver, Colorado. Prosecutors laid out their case. Larry had murdered Bianca in cold blood, firing a shotgun blast into her chest as she prepared to leave Zambia. His motive was clear: money and freedom. He wanted nearly $5 million in insurance payouts and a life with his mistress. Larry took the stand in his own defense, insisting Bianca's death was a tragic accident. He even claimed their marriage had been open since 2000, suggesting Bianca had tolerated his affairs. But the jury saw through him. One juror later said that before Larry testified, they weren't sure. But once he did, his arrogance and inconsistencies convinced them of his guilt. On August 1, 2022, the jury returned its verdict: guilty of murder and mail fraud. Larry Rudolph was sentenced to life in prison. Lori received 17 years for her role in covering up the crime. For Bianca's children, the verdict was devastating. At first, they had stood by their father, believing in his innocence. They even signed affidavits supporting his release before trial. But once they sat through the evidence, the ballistics, the testimony, the photographs, everything changed. Julian later said, "Nothing could have prepared us for those visuals, for that testimony. It was horrific. The betrayal cut deep." He rarely answers his father's calls from prison now. He cannot forgive the man who murdered his mother. At Lori's sentencing, Bianca's daughter Anna spoke directly to her. "Lori, you have taken my parents. Despite everything you have done, you will never take my soul. This might be difficult to understand because you don't have one." Today, Larry sits in a federal penitentiary in Indiana, serving a life sentence. Lori is in a Florida prison, scheduled for release in 2036. What began as a glamorous safari in the African wilderness ended in tragedy. Bianca Rudolph set out to hunt a leopard, but instead became prey to the man who had vowed to love her. It is a story of greed and betrayal, a story of a wife who trusted too deeply, a story of children who lost both parents in a single gunshot. Bianca Rudolph never imagined her life would end this way. She was a woman of elegance and strength, a mother who loved her children fiercely, and a partner who believed in the vows she once made. For years, she built her life around her family, around Larry, around the idea that love and loyalty could withstand anything. But love can be a fragile thing when trust is broken. Behind the glamorous trips, the shared passions, and the smiling family portraits, there were secrets. Secrets strong enough to shatter a family forever. Larry Rudolph was a man admired by many, a successful dentist, a wealthy hunter, and a figure who seemed to have it all. But beneath the polished surface, his choices were driven by greed, ego, and desire. He carried on an affair. He lived a double life. And when faced with the ultimatum of choosing between his wife and his mistress, he chose the path of betrayal. The shot that killed Bianca did not just silence her voice. It tore through the lives of her children. It erased the trust they had in their father. It turned their world upside down in a single moment. For Larry, it was about money, control, and the illusion of freedom. For Bianca, it was about trust, family, and the belief that love could be enough. The contrast between them grew sharper as the truth unfolded in the courtroom. Witnesses came forward. Evidence spoke louder than denials. The mistress's ultimatum, the insurance money, the suspicious circumstances in Zambia, every detail painted a picture of betrayal. And slowly, the image of the loving husband dissolved into that of a calculating murderer. Bianca's children faced the hardest truth of all. They wanted to believe their father. They wanted to hold on to the man they had known growing up, but the evidence left no space for doubt. They lost their mother to a gunshot. They lost their father to his own choices. Two parents taken in two different ways, leaving behind a void that can never be filled. Justice has been served. The courts delivered their verdict. Larry will spend the rest of his life behind bars. His mistress, too, faced the weight of her role in the lies and deceit. But justice cannot heal the wounds of betrayal. It cannot bring back Bianca's laughter. It cannot give her children back the future they were meant to have. The scars left behind will remain long after the gavel has fallen silent. Still, there is something that lives on. Bianca's legacy is not defined by the way she died. Her legacy is the love she gave so freely to her children. It is the strength she carried through her life. It is the truth that eventually prevailed, no matter how deeply buried it was under lies. Her story is a reminder to us all that behind the perfect smiles, the exotic vacations, and the carefully built images, there can be darkness. That trust, once broken, can unravel entire lives. That greed and betrayal leave destruction far greater than any material gain could ever cover. Bianca's story matters because it shows us the cost of lies. It shows us the fragility of human relationships, and it shows us the enduring power of truth, even when surrounded by deceit. As we reflect on this tragedy, let us remember Bianca, not for the way she left this world, but for the love she gave, the life she lived, and the light she brought to those around her. Her children will carry that love forever, and the world will remember that, in the end. The truth cannot be silenced. Bianca's voice may have been stolen, but her story speaks louder than ever. It asks us to look beyond appearances, to value loyalty, and to never underestimate the strength of truth.